Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club. This is part 3 of our build of the Estes Screamin Mimi. We are to a pretty glue-heavy episode, so there's going to be some editing here and there because you certainly don't need to watch me glue all this stuff together. The first thing we need to do is our motor mount here is dry and ready to go, and it needs to go inside the body tube. So I'm going to go down here. Remember in the last episode we put a bunch of marks near the end to show us where the fins were going. So it's going to go into this business end, like so. And we're going to test fit it first to make sure everything is good. That's pretty good. So I'm going to pull it out. Ooh, that's sticky. About stiff. This has been a while. So that's all set. Now, in order to do this, we're going to put a thin layer of glue just inside, but we're also going to put some glue about 2 inches into the body tube. The instructions say to use your finger. I am not going to use my finger because we have tools. Those dowels that I cut, this is perfect for this kind of job. And we're going to use this a decent amount today. It would also be nice to have a little bit of a scrap paper or something like that to contain our glue. I usually have a big cut piece of cardboard when I do this at home, but here's an index card. That'll work just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my glue. I'm going to put some down here on the index card. There we go. And that's probably plenty. Then I'm going to use my dowel. I should know about 2 inches. You should probably measure that, but I'm going to estimate it because I've done this many, many times at this point. So I'm going to scoop up some glue on the end of my dowel. I'm going to grab my body tube, and probably won't be able to see this too well, but I'm going to just paint the glue on the inside of the body tube about 2 inches deep. Probably okay with the amount of glue I squeezed out. It'll be close anyway. Just kind of scraping it up. Waste not, want not. So there we go. Glue on the inside, fantastic. The other layer of glue I can just squeeze on here right by the end. Now when I push the motor mount past this, it's going to take some of the glue with it, but it should leave enough for us to hold the other end. Plus, I can actually, this isn't all that far in, I can put some glue in there. Anyway, the instructions say that we want to have the hook lined up with the launch lug line, which I have labeled here. It's the one with LL, it's this one. So I'm going to do my best to line that up. And it also says that this tube should be flush with the end of the rocket. That's kind of hard sometimes. I'm using my finger to push gently so that they're essentially lined up. And I'm eyeballing as best I can. Looks like it's out a little bit, so a little bit more push. And that should do it. That's pretty good. It doesn't need to be perfect, but that looks pretty promising. And the hook is basically in line with the lug. That, again, isn't super vital. You don't really need to do that, but it's nice for a variety of reasons we don't need to get into. Now, the next step, according to the instructions, is, remember, this is a Screamin Mimi, so they're going to be 4 of these tubes that have whistles on the end of them, and they're getting glued to stubby little fins like so. I've drawn lines in them. That was part of the instructions using the door jam technique. They're going to get lined up like this. The instructions actually want me to, though, put the whistle in the kit right now. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that after I've painted everything. That way I don't have to cover the whistles when I paint them. Because if I get painting them, they'll probably be ruined. So I don't want to do that. So what I am going to do is I'm going to attach the whistle fins, as it says. So essentially I'm taking one of these and one of these and gluing them together. The stick I'm actually still going to use. Here's how this is going to work. I'm going to put, not actually going to put it on here. I'm going to put a layer of glue on my fin here. I do not need much. That's plenty. What I'm going to use the dowel for is I'm going to brush it evenly. So it's going to be thin and even. Okay, that's fantastic. Now, In best practice, we're going to let this sit for approximately a minute or so, and then we're going to put a second layer on, and then we're going to apply the tube. The second layer of glue makes the adhesion better, and giving it some time to set up also makes it tackier and makes the whole process go a little bit faster. It's stronger and it's easier to work with. So, although normally, I'd actually kind of count this out, this is probably good enough at this point. I am going to then get my glue again, put another thin layer on. Need to clean the nozzle for the glue here. It's not coming out super evenly. Okay. Use my dowel again to make sure everything's nice and even. And at this point, it'd probably be a good idea to check along the sides to make sure there isn't any oozing out the side. This is in good shape. There isn't a preferred direction for these. I mean, in theory, this is going toward the roof. It doesn't really matter. The next thing I'm going to do is put them together like so. I've got a line, and we want that line to be as centered as possible on the fin as we're attaching it. So it doesn't need to be in the middle. They're approximately the same length. They're not perfectly the same length, but they're close. I'm going to kind of center it a little bit better since my tube does seem to be slightly longer than the fins. That allows me, I can see the line here in this direction. It looks pretty well centered. Here, I'm not quite right, so I'm just going to kind of tap it so that it is basically dead center in the line. These fins are so stubby, too, that you also want to check to make sure that it's perpendicular. The fins are so stubby, so that's not really a problem. I'm also going to wipe off the excess. I'm going to put fillets on these. Not right now, but eventually. But I'm going to wipe them down so that they're fairly clean. After I've done futzing around with this, I want to make sure that I didn't mess up my alignment, which I don't seem to have done. So that's basically done right now. These are going to go off to dry. There's 3 more of them, but you certainly don't need to watch me attach them. So those are going to go off and live on my drying rack for the time being. The next thing that needs to be done is the lower fins need to be attached. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to do them off camera. Same deal with these, don't need them. What I do need, though, are the fins and body tube. Now, the fins are going, according to the instructions, flush against the end, down here. So that's pretty easy to deal with. I actually put them a little bit short of the end and then kind of bump them back, because if you put them right on the end, you can't see the line, and then you don't know if you aligned it properly. Also, I was pointing at a whistle fin. I don't want to do that. Remember, the ones with the measurement, those are for the whistle fins because they stick up a bit. This line here is one for the fins, and I need to make sure that I'm actually reading which one I'm looking at. I want the ones that just say L for, I don't remember what the L stood for. Launch, I guess. I don't know. Oh, lower fin. It stands for L. Lower fin. Great. So, same deal. I am going to grab a fin. This is the root edge. All the other edges I have rounded a little bit. I am going to apply the glue. I am going to use my stick to spread it thinly. And I'm going to wait a little bit to put on the second layer and apply it. Yeah, there we go. That looks pretty good. So while I wait for the glue to get tacky and things, this is probably the most frustrating part of the build because this fin isn't that bad. It's fairly wide, so there's a good amount of purchase on this. Plenty of glue, places for the glue to stick. But these things do tend to flop over. It's just a fact of life when you're building, especially if you're not using a jig of any sort. So I'm going to attach this. I'm going to be really careful to hold it in place until I think the glue's fairly steady. And then I'm going to do my best not to bump it, because bumping it would be bad. All right, time for the next bit of glue. And again, we don't want to flood this, because the more glue you have, the longer it'll take to dry. And it's not like more glue in this case is going to be any better at attaching the fin. We don't want that. Oh, I got an email. How exciting. All right, so let's get these out of the way. I need to make sure I'm on the right line. So here's a line for a fin, and I want this to go right flush at the back. So I can see just fine here, and I'm kind of roll it on. It looks like my fin is pretty much centered in the middle down here. And I'm kind of rolling it into contact with the tube and aiming so that the end of it that I can see is right dead in the middle of the line too. That looks pretty promising. Taking it back here, I can actually see a little bit, you probably can't, but I can see a little bit of the line, and I'm going to adjust my fin a little bit to make sure it's dead in the middle. There's a decent amount of excess glue here, but I'm not going to worry about that too much right now because my fin is going to be very, very floppy at the moment. I don't want to be nudging it or doing anything that might cause it to fall over or get bumped out of alignment. I'm not even checking the alignment too much right now to make sure that it's vertical. I will do that momentarily, but kind of looking at my projector that I'm recording this on, it doesn't look too straight. That's okay for now. We can adjust it. We just don't want it to fall over. Having it flop over is very frustrating and very irritating. At this point, it's probably tacky enough so that I can at least clean off the excess glue. And off onto my handy dandy tissue. That goes. Same deal with the other side. Usually one side tends to get gluier. And you don't really need to be too precise about that either because we're going to be adding fillets over the top of that. Now, I did bump it a little bit, so it's slightly off center there, so I'm adjusting it carefully with my thumb here. Now I'm going to check the vertical alignment, which I have to pick it up in order to do. So you can't see, you're just going to have to listen to me. I've got it here. I'm basically looking down the body of it. We don't need this to be perfect either because we're going to check all 4 fins in alignment together before the glue gets really dry. So just having a look, it looks like it's at a right angle, but looks can be deceiving. So there it is. Looks reasonably good for the time being. So that looks like it's pretty much ready for me to let it dry for a little bit while I attach the other fins. I'm obviously not going to attach all the fins while I'm here. The other thing I'm not going to show myself doing is the whistle fins are going to get attached after the blower fins are all dried. And that's the same procedure, so I'm not going to do that again. Basically, I'm going to be finishing the rest of the gluing construction off camera, and by the time I'm back, I should be ready to do pretty much all the final assembly. In fact, I think I'm going to be painting between this video and the next one too. So our final video should just be the incidental construction. Oh, there's one other thing I need to do. I'm gluing, the launch lug needs to go on too. Remember, we marked that off here. It's supposed to be 7 inches from the end. I will be doing that off camera as well. Applying the launch lug, you put glue on, it's just like a fin, except it's even more forgiving, I think, personally. So anyway, next video should be finishing this thing up. How exciting. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the final installation.